Hi, good morning, and welcome, and thanks for coming today. Let me tell you a little bit more about me and DreamIt, just to frame the rest of the talk. I'll be very, very fast. We specialize in investing in very early stage companies. We work in 3 verticals: secure tech, which is largely cybersecurity, health tech, and urban tech. We do a lot in all of those verticals, where we come into Florida multiple times, specifically Tampa, multiple times per year. I'm based in Philadelphia, and DreamIt is based in New York City and Philadelphia. So we do early stage investing. We manage about $65 million, and we run an acceleration program for early stage companies. And I want to give you some hints based on what I've seen happening in Tampa and other cities around the world. So my talk, reality check. What do startups actually need to succeed? This is going to dovetail really well with the panel that you just heard. Let me tell you a common complaint that I hear from startups around the world. So we spend time in Israel. This may be a little different in Israel, but in Israel, in Australia, in Asia, all throughout the United States. And we go into all these markets, and I'll be in Seoul or I'll be in Melbourne, Australia, and entrepreneurs will tell me, you know, the reason we don't have more startup success is there's not enough local capital. There's not enough angels. That's the thing that holds us back. That's why we're not more successful. And I don't exactly agree with that. So let's challenge that assumption a little bit. By the way, my background, I'm a serial entrepreneur and I'm a venture investor. I'm assuming a lot of you are entrepreneurs, so I want to challenge that assumption. First of all, let's just be really clear. Not every business needs venture capital. Venture capital is the most expensive way that you can fund a business. Myself, a couple of the DreamIt co-founders, we all bootstrapped our first companies. That is a great way. We have companies that come into DreamIt, we're pre-Series A, and we have companies that come into DreamIt to raise basically their seed round or Series A. You know, they're doing $100,000 a month in revenue, and we're the first outside capital ever getting into them. So venture capital is very expensive. Not everybody needs it. Just please keep that in mind. The rest of my talk is going to be about VC. It's a very expensive way to build a business. For those that do need venture capital, I want you to think about 2 things. Does the local capital scene really matter? We're going to challenge that. You have a nice capital seed. Florida Funders does a great job, and the whole team there does a great job, but I don't want to hear this excuse. We'll get into that. And let's do a little RCA, if you don't know that acronym, root cause analysis. So what's the real issue here if you think the startups aren't successful enough? So let me tell you what we see again and again in all the markets we go into. And again, I'm from Philly, and you talk to Philly startups, and they'll say, you know why there's not more successful startups in Philly? There's not enough local capital, and I've just had enough of it. So here's my thoughts. Number 1, we see that startups consistently are not working on really big problems with unique solutions. The speaker at the end who invested in Cruise, what did he say? Unique, big ideas, unique ideas, new things. People aren't attacking that. They're not attacking big markets. They don't have the right traction. They don't have a compelling story. They don't have an expansive vision. And oh yeah, capital is one of the other things. There are other elements, but I'm going to hit these really, really quickly and give a light treatment to each one of them. First thing I want you to think about is, are you solving a big problem with a unique solution? So when I mean a big problem, what do I mean by that? Is it big and is it urgent? Do you have real evidence the problem exists? And is it need, nicer, or a must-have? Let's break that down a little bit. So is it a big and urgent problem? Does anybody know what percentage of startups approximately fail? And the usual category is, it turns out they really weren't working on a big and urgent problem. Anybody have an idea? You can shout out an answer. What percentage fail? Because it turns out nobody really cared. Any ideas? Okay, I'll give. No, not 80%. It's not that bad. Half, about 50%. 40 to 50% of startups fail because it turns out they're not working on anything big and urgent. So if you're trying to triage an idea, we do a lot of triaging of startups. And we always joke about, if the problem isn't big and urgent and the entrepreneur can't convince us of that, we're done, right? It's like having a patient come into the ER. You check their pulse, and there's no pulse there. I don't need to do blood work, right? They're dead. So the most important thing, are you working on a big and urgent problem? Do you have real evidence that the problem exists? Maybe something happened to you and you said, aha, I had an aha moment. So it's something that's impacted you. But then can you collect other evidence that other people, a large market, are having that same type of problem? And is it a nice to have, a need to have, or a must have? We see a lot of startups that are working on kind of nice to have ideas, but it's not a need or a must have. You want that urgency. If you've ever heard, there's a great thing I learned from Brad Feld years ago, and I'm sure he learned it from somebody else. You know, are you selling vitamins, aspirin, or antibiotics, right? You want to be selling antibiotics. You know, if I forgot to take my vitamin this morning, I'm still okay. I don't know if you know this graphic. This is an interesting problem that was solved years ago. This is a picture from the 1950s from a Volvo, when Volvo invented the three-point seatbelt. By the way, they deliberately decided not to patent it because they wanted to give away that innovation to the rest of the world. Solve a big problem? Yeah, let me tell you the big problem. You get in a car accident, you break your rib cage and die, or you face plant on the windshield and you get a traumatic brain injury, or you're scarred for life in a really bad way. That's a big and urgent problem, and they came up with a unique solution. Instead of just a lap belt, do a shoulder belt as well. So think about that as when you say, well, we have a really big problem. A lot of times I'll say to an entrepreneur, bigger than a seatbelt? Is your solution unique? Is it really different? We see entrepreneurs with a lot of Me Too type of solutions. Be careful about that. That customers care greatly and that you're delivering compelling results that customers care about. So you want to raise capital, you want to do something big, make sure it's a big problem, a unique solution. Next thing, going quickly, I want you to think about, somebody had said earlier on the last panel, is it a big market? Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, if you want a copy, I see you taking some pictures, I'll just go back. If you go back, I apologize. If you go to dreamit.com/presentations, this presentation's there, you can get it along with 6 or 7 of our other kind of common presentations, how to pitch, how to raise, how to talk to customers, all the stuff we do with DreamIt companies. Okay, so anyway, market size. Let me tell you the most common mistakes when people say, there's not enough startup success. And I want to challenge, again, we're going to challenge it a couple ways. A lot of times we see entrepreneurs not going after a big enough market. They'll say the market's enormous. And what they'll misquote, they'll say, look, if you look at the opioid crisis in the United States today, the problem is huge. And it is huge, and it's ugly. The opioid crisis is a $100 billion problem in the United States today. Right. That's not the size of that's the size of the problem, not of your market. Or they'll say, well, if you look at the market today, if you look at the sale of automobiles in the United States today, it's a multi-billion-dollar market, right? But you're selling an accessory that goes into a car that's $5.99. Remember, your market is the number of purchasers times the price of what they're paying. You have to go after big markets if you're trying to raise capital. So as an entrepreneur, think about that. As an entrepreneur, if you want to be successful and have investment living here in your companies, you have to show traction, customers, trials, or dollars. And if you're super early and you don't even have a product yet, that traction of customers means you get in your Prius, you drive to Orlando, you drive to Clearwater, you drive to Miami, and you go meet with 10 or 20 customers. And you say, if I build this, is it a big problem? Would you buy it? Would you pay this? Then you go to an investor with that evidence. You don't have to build a product. First thing is to show the market is there. When you're telling a story, when you're pitching an investment group like us or any of the investors that are here, are you telling a story that is compelling? Please remember, when you are pitching an early stage company, you are storytelling. It's like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a little girl. She was born in the forest. She was cold. Once upon a time, I had an idea for a startup. Is your story compelling? Is it cohesive? Is it believable? Because a lot of times we call BS where we just don't believe it. And is it audacious? You're looking for, when an investor is venture investing, they're swinging for the fences, and they want to see businesses that are swinging for the fences. If you're showing a model that says, really, we're hoping 3 or 4 years from now we'll be doing $3 million a year, it's not going to be interesting to a venture investor, and maybe you don't need venture investing for a business like that. So what I want to talk to you about and have you think about is how in Tampa do you raise the bar? Now, please don't get me wrong. DreamIt, we have, on average, we run 2 cycles, 2 cohorts per year across all 3 of our verticals, secure tech, health tech, and urban tech. We do all of those. So we have about 40 to 50 companies go through DreamIt per year. We have about 1,000 companies apply from 40 countries around the world to try to get in. 3% typically make it in. It's very selective. Every cohort, we have a company or 2 from Tampa, every single time. And oh, by the way, sometimes we have a company or 2 from Philly. We don't play geographic preferences. So there are great companies, there are great ideas, there is great technology in Tampa, but when you think about all of this, I want you to raise the bar. So she's summiting Everest is what that image is. Are you working on a big problem with a unique solution? Do you have a big market, the right traction, a compelling story, and an expansive vision? That's what you're going to need. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to stop blaming local capital. That dog doesn't hunt with me, ever. See, how many of you are entrepreneurs doing a startup? Just show of hands. Okay, dozens and dozens or hundreds. Okay, it's just all over, scattered through the arena. Let's stop blaming local capital, because as entrepreneurs, when we see a problem, what do? We fix it. We go around it. So you ready? I'm going to show you how you fix this problem. It's going to be really complicated. You're going to go, right? Investment lives here and can live in Tampa. It doesn't mean it needs to come here. Again, you have Florida funders, you have angels, you have other groups. But if you're saying there's not enough local capital, I did this slide Sunday to make sure my pricing was accurate. Here's the deal of the week. Right now, JetBlue from Tampa to Boston is 160 bucks. Fly, like on a Tuesday, come back on a Thursday to spend 2 days. Go meet with a bunch of Boston VCs if you think there's not enough local capital. By the way, $160, if you think that's a lot of money, stop getting your grande latte at Starbucks for $4.10. 40 days in a row, you can afford the flight. Or get in your car and drive 6 hours to Atlanta. Go to Miami. I don't want to hear no excuses. Hey, we'd build $1 billion company. We just can't find capital in Tampa. Please. I don't know how many of you are from Minot, North Dakota. It is really freaking cold there, right on the edge of Canada. If I had a company, a biotech that had the cure for cancer, you know what, it's in Minot, it would never get funded. It's just the cure for cancer. Work on big ideas, challenge yourself. Absolutely, I believe it's a meritocracy. And the last thing I just want you to note, and somebody kind of brought this up, I want you to be really careful if you're a startup entrepreneur, how much time you're spending trying to raise capital versus selling. One of the people on the last panel said, and I can't believe it, can't endorse it more. The number one thing you want to do, especially if you're a B2B enterprise, and we deal with mostly B2B companies, the best thing you can get is revenue. Capital sucks. Revenue is awesome. We have companies at DreamIt. What's your goal? I want to raise 10 million. Well, how about 10 million in revenue? Let's grow the customer base. And I often think for entrepreneurs, if you spent half as much time trying to sell to customers as you did trying to sell to VCs, you'd be so much better off. So be careful on where you spend your time. That's my talk. Quick reality check, what startups actually need to succeed. Level up, think about working harder. Capital isn't here. Get in your car, get in a flight.